My name is Sophia Langford. I'm 36 years old. And the last thing I remember before everything went hazy was my mother-in-law sliding a second generous slice of her signature lavender honey cake onto my plate. She did it with that warm, knowing smile she'd perfected over decades. The one that always made you feel like you were exactly where you belonged. I came to under bright fluorescent lights, an IV line pulling at the inside of my elbow, heart monitor clicking steadily beside me. My mouth felt like cotton and copper at the same time. The private VIP room smelled of antiseptic and faint lavender, her scent. The heavy wooden door was left half open, probably on purpose. Through that narrow gap, I heard her voice first. Low, urgent, controlled. "You're sure she finished the whole piece this time?" Then came my sister-in-law, Brooke's soft, almost amused laugh. "She did, Mom. Relax. By this time tomorrow, everything she built will finally be ours." My blood turned to ice in an instant. My heart rate spiked on the monitor for a second before I forced myself to breathe slowly. I reached for my phone on the chair beside the bed. Battery at 28%. My fingers felt heavy, but I managed to type one single line and hit send. Execute everything. Now. 48 hours earlier, I had signed documents none of them knew existed, and the woman who helped me prepare them was already on her way to this very hospital. But before I tell you how it all unfolded in that room, I need to take you back, because that anniversary dinner wasn't the beginning of the story. It was simply the moment the mask finally slipped completely. Welcome back to Calm Drama Stories, everyone. I'm so glad you're here with me. This channel is where we sit down together and talk about the kind of quiet battles most people never see coming. The ones that happen inside families that are supposed to protect you. Every story here is a reminder that silence isn't weakness. It's strategy. It's preparation. It's power. If you've ever felt the slow erosion of your boundaries while someone smiled and said, "We're family," or if you've ever had to protect what you built with your own two hands from the very people who were supposed to have your back then. This story is going to feel painfully familiar. Stick with me through this one. I promise it's worth it. Drop a broken heart in the comments right now if you've ever had to choose between keeping the peace and protecting your peace. If this already has you leaning in, go ahead and hit that subscribe button so you don't miss the rest. Let's dive in. That night started like so many others in the Caldwell house. Beautiful table settings, soft lighting, the smell of rosemary and fresh bread filling the air. But by the time I was lying in that hospital bed, listening to their whispers, I had already spent months building an invisible fortress around everything I had worked so hard to create. They thought they were steps ahead. They had no idea I had been 3 moves ahead the entire time. I lay there pretending to still be groggy, eyes half closed, listening to the low murmur of their voices fade down the hallway. My mind was racing, even though my body felt heavy. This wasn't just about money or control anymore. This was about survival, the kind no one prepares you for when you say, "I do." And here's what I want you to remember as we go through this together. Sometimes the most dangerous people aren't the ones who scream and yell. They're the ones who hug you tight, call you sweetheart, and slowly tighten the rope while telling you it's for your own good. I stayed perfectly still until I heard their footsteps move farther away. Then I picked up my phone again, heart pounding, and waited for the reply that would change everything. If you've ever been in a situation where you had to play along while your entire world was being quietly dismantled behind your back, type the word "silent" in the comments. I see you. You're not alone in this. Now, to truly understand how I ended up in that VIP hospital room with my mother-in-law, thinking she had won, I need to bring you back to where it all really started, long before the lavender honey cake, long before the forged papers, and long before I learned just how calculated family love could be. Now, to truly understand how I ended up in that VIP hospital room with my mother-in-law thinking she had already won, I need to bring you back to where it all really started. Long before the lavender honey cake, long before the forged papers, and long before I learned just how calculated family love could be. I grew up in a small river town in upstate New York, in a modest white Cape Cod house that my single mom kept together with sheer willpower and endless late-night sewing jobs. Money was always tight, but love and resilience weren't. From a very young age, I watched her stretch every dollar, smile through exhaustion, and still find ways to make me feel like we had everything we needed. She taught me the most important lesson of my life. Nothing in this world is handed to you. You build it with your own hands, you guard it fiercely, and you never apologize for wanting stability. That mindset carried me through college. I worked 2 jobs while studying nursing, then specialized in integrative and holistic wellness. Years spent in busy hospital wards showed me the same heartbreaking pattern over and over. Patients would leave with prescriptions and instructions, but no real support system to help them heal at home. They needed more than medicine. They needed community, nutrition guidance, stress management, and genuine care. I knew I could do something about that. So right after graduation, I took a leap. With my savings, a small business loan, and a lot of faith, I opened my first integrative wellness center in a converted old warehouse on the edge of Rochester. It was nothing fancy, just one big open space with yoga mats, a few treatment rooms, and a small nutrition corner. I did everything myself: greeting clients, leading meditation sessions, creating treatment plans, even cleaning the floors at night. Many nights I slept on a futon in the back office, because I couldn't afford to hire help yet. But people responded. Word spread about the calm, personalized care we offered. Within 2 years, I expanded to a second location. Within 4 years, 3 centers. By year 7, Langford Wellness had grown to 8 thriving locations across New York State. We offered everything from IV nutrient therapy and acupuncture to mindfulness programs and personalized wellness coaching. It wasn't just a business to me, it was my purpose, my heartbeat. I still personally led Saturday morning meditation classes because I refused to lose touch with why I started this in the first place. I knew every therapist by name. I remembered client stories. I reviewed every new hire myself. The company was mine in every sense of the word, built from nothing but stubborn determination and a deep desire to help people heal beyond the hospital walls. I was proud of it the way only someone who has sacrificed sleep, weekends, and relationships can be proud. I was excellent at caring for everyone else, but I was terrible at noticing when someone was quietly circling my own life, looking for a way in. If you've ever built something from the ground up while the world told you it was impossible, drop a fire in the comments. I want to hear your story too. By the time I met Ethan, Langford Wellness was already successful enough that I could breathe a little easier. But success, I would soon learn, can also make you a target, especially within families that have been quietly losing ground while pretending everything is fine. By the time I met Ethan, Langford Wellness was already successful enough that I could breathe a little easier. But success, I would soon learn, can also make you a target, especially within families that have been quietly losing ground while pretending everything is fine. I met Ethan Caldwell at a charity gala for rural health access programs in Albany. The event was filled with networking, champagne, and people who love to talk about giving back. He stood out immediately. Tall, quietly confident, with kind eyes and a way of listening that made you feel like you were the only person in the crowded ballroom. When I mentioned I ran a chain of wellness centers, most men would nod politely and change the subject. Not Ethan. He asked thoughtful questions about client retention, reimbursement challenges, and how we integrated holistic care with traditional medicine. That genuine interest caught my attention. We dated for 10 calm, steady months. He was patient with my long hours, never complained when I had to leave dinner early for a staff emergency, and seemed truly proud of what I had built. For the first time in years, I felt like I could share my life with someone without constantly proving my worth. When he finally suggested I meet his family, I was nervous but hopeful. The Caldwell estate sat on beautiful rolling acres just outside Saratoga Springs. As I drove up the long driveway lined with ancient oak trees, I remember thinking this looked like the kind of place where families stayed strong for generations. Diane, my future mother-in-law, greeted me at the grand front door with open arms. She smelled of expensive candles and fresh garden roses. She held my face gently in both hands and said with warm sincerity, "Sophia, you're exactly the kind of strong, accomplished woman this family has been missing. Welcome home, sweetheart." The dining table was set with heirloom china that had been passed down for decades. Soft classical music played in the background. Brooke, Ethan's younger sister, sat across from me looking polished and put together. She smiled and asked all the right questions about my business, but I noticed how her eyes measured me. The way someone evaluates a property, they're deciding whether to invest in or compete with. I filed that observation away quietly. Throughout dinner, Diane was the perfect hostess. She asked about my mother, my journey building Langford Wellness, and my plans for the future. Everything felt warm. It felt like belonging. Ethan squeezed my hand under the table and whispered, "They already love you." I smiled and squeezed back, letting myself believe it. Looking back now, that warmth was never just welcome. It was reconnaissance. Diane wasn't embracing me as a daughter-in-law. She was appraising an asset, one that could potentially solve the quiet, financial problems the Caldwell family had been hiding behind their perfect facade. If you've ever walked into a room full of smiles and felt that tiny whisper in your gut saying something wasn't quite right, but you pushed it down because you wanted to believe in the fairy tale type, gut in the comments. I see you. That first dinner planted the seeds. But the real cracks didn't show until months after the wedding, when the word family started to mean something very different depending on who was saying it. That first dinner planted the seeds. But the real cracks didn't show until months after the wedding, when the word family started to mean something very different depending on who was saying it. 6 months into our marriage, Diane invited me to brunch, just the two of us at her favorite upscale cafe in Saratoga. She ordered for both of us without asking, then set her fork down, folded her hands, and leaned in with that gentle, motherly tone. "Sophia, darling, Ethan and I have been talking. The Caldwell Family Trust handles all our real estate holdings and investments. It would be so much smarter and safer if we folded Langford Wellness into the trust. Tax efficiency, asset protection, everything streamlined under one umbrella." She made it sound like the most generous gift she could offer. I took a slow sip of my coffee, keeping my voice even. "I really appreciate the thought, Diane, but Langford Wellness is my company. I built it entirely on my own before Ethan and I even met. I'd prefer to keep it separate for now." Her smile stayed perfectly in place, but I caught the brief flicker in her eyes. Something cool and calculating that didn't reach the warmth she projected. "Of course, sweetheart. Just something to think about. The door is always open." That evening, Ethan brought it up again while we were cleaning up after dinner. "Mom was only trying to help, Soph. She knows this world better than anyone. Don't make it weird." I dried my hands on a towel and looked at him. I said, "No, it's my business." The air in the kitchen grew thick. That was the first time I felt the invisible cord. The one that always pulled Ethan back toward his mother whenever I tried to set a boundary around what I had earned. I let it slide that night. I had early client sessions and a new center opening soon, but the small erosions kept happening. First, it was a $15,000 transfer from our joint account to cover a short-term bridge for Mom's property taxes. Then another $8,000 a few weeks later. Each time Ethan would shrug and say, "It's temporary. Family helps family." I started paying closer attention. I quietly opened a separate personal and business account at a different bank, rerouted all my direct deposits, and left only enough in the joint account to cover household bills. When Ethan finally noticed weeks later, he looked genuinely hurt. "Why don't you trust us anymore?" I answered calmly. Because I work 60 to 70 hours a week for that money, Ethan. I need to know exactly where it's going. That conversation ended in silence. The cord tightened again, but this time I didn't let go. I began building walls, quiet, invisible ones that no one could see from the outside. If you've ever had to quietly protect your finances while someone you love made you feel guilty for it, type the word boundaries in the comments. You're stronger than you know. Those early cracks taught me something important. Love and control can wear the same smile. And in the Caldwell family shares everything really meant what's yours becomes ours. I threw myself deeper into work to cope, expanding to 2 more locations, hiring new wellness coaches, and personally overseeing the development of a new corporate wellness program. But every time I came home, I could feel the quiet pressure building. I still wanted to believe we could work through it. I still loved the man I married. But deep down, the nurse and businesswoman in me was already starting to document everything, just in case. Little did I know, the biggest red flags were still coming, hidden in plain sight, wrapped in elegant handwriting and family loyalty. Little did I know, the biggest red flags were still coming, hidden in plain sight, wrapped in elegant handwriting and family loyalty. One ordinary Tuesday evening, I was searching for a phone charger in Ethan's briefcase when my fingers brushed against a thick manila folder. Inside was a healthcare power of attorney document with my name at the top. It granted Ethan broad authority over my medical decisions and, more importantly, sweeping financial powers in the event of my incapacitation. The date was from several months earlier, and at the bottom was a signature that looked very much like mine, except I had never seen or signed this document in my life. I stood frozen in the hallway for what felt like minutes, heart hammering. I photographed every single page, the notary seal, the wording, the forged signature, then carefully placed the folder exactly as I had found it. That night, lying next to my sleeping husband, I stared at the ceiling and felt something shift inside me. The man I had married might be willing to erase me on paper if it served his mother's needs. The next morning I reached out to my old friend Dr. Lena Torres, a sharp integrative medicine physician I'd known since residency. Over coffee at a quiet corner cafe, I told her everything. She listened without interrupting, then set her cup down and looked me straight in the eyes. "Sophia, this is serious. You need your own attorney. Someone with no ties to the Caldwells whatsoever. And while you're at it, get baseline blood work done, just in case." I found Rachel Morales the following week. She was a formidable estate and elder law attorney with a no-nonsense reputation and zero connections to the Saratoga social circle. In her calm, sunlit office, I laid out every detail, the unauthorized transfers, the brunch conversation, the forged POA. Rachel didn't flinch. She simply nodded and said, "You have forgery, financial trespass, and a clear pattern. We're going to move quickly, but we're going to move silently." Over the next few days, we worked with precision. We restructured my personal trust into an irrevocable one, removing Ethan completely as beneficiary and successor trustee. Rachel was named emergency trustee. We updated the operating agreement for Langford Wellness, replacing Ethan as any interim manager with Rachel. We pre-filed a formal challenge to the forged POA with the county clerk's office. And most importantly, we built what Rachel called the dead man's switch, a carefully timed check-in system. If I misscheduled secure messages, Rachel would automatically trigger restraining orders, asset freezes, police reports, and emergency filings. I changed every password. I rerouted every business login. I documented every suspicious interaction in a secure, encrypted journal. At home, I continued playing the part of the loving wife, smiling at Sunday dinners, helping Brooke brainstorm her latest business idea, kissing Ethan goodnight like nothing had changed. But inside, I had become a strategist in my own life. If you've ever had to smile through dinner while quietly preparing for the possibility that your own family might betray you, type "prepared" in the comments. It's a lonely but necessary place to be. Those weeks of silent preparation were some of the hardest of my life. I was grieving the marriage I thought I had, while simultaneously building the fortress that would protect everything I had earned. I still hoped it wouldn't come to that. But hope, I was learning, is not a strategy. Preparation is. Then came the night I found the email I was never supposed to see. Ethan had left his laptop open on the kitchen counter while he was in the shower. A notification popped up from Diane to their family attorney. The subject line read, "Emergency conservatorship timeline." I shouldn't have looked, but I did. And what I read next changed everything. I shouldn't have looked, but I did. The email from Diane to their family attorney was coldly detailed. It laid out a step-by-step plan. After I was admitted to the hospital, Ethan would present the forged healthcare power of attorney at admissions. Then they would file for emergency temporary conservatorship, citing medical incapacitation. They even had a sympathetic judge's clerk lined up for a quick hearing. Once granted, they would redirect all Langford Wellness accounts and my personal assets into the Caldwell Family Trust within 48 hours. The final step was using the interim management clause to seize full control of my company. I read it twice, my hands strangely steady. Something inside me went very still. The same focused calm I used to feel during a wellness center crisis. They had a complete blueprint to erase me while I lay unconscious in a hospital bed. They thought they were about to inherit everything I had spent years building. I took screenshots of every line, forwarded them to Rachel from my secure personal email, then closed the laptop and wiped the screen exactly as it had been. When Ethan came out of the shower, I handed him his coffee and mentioned I had an early morning staff meeting. My voice didn't waver. Rachel's reply came within minutes. "This accelerates our timeline. Do not skip that anniversary dinner. We will be ready. Stay calm and keep playing the part." The next 5 weeks became the longest, most exhausting performance of my life. I smiled through family brunches. I helped Brooke refine her new, mindful lifestyle brand, Pitch, nodding encouragingly while she complained about how hard it was to succeed without family backing. I kissed Ethan goodnight and listened to him talk about work as if nothing was wrong. On the outside, I was still the supportive wife and daughter-in-law. On the inside, I was steel. I changed every remaining password, added extra layers of security to all business systems, and made sure Rachel had full emergency access. I continued my normal Saturday morning meditation sessions at the centers, looking into the eyes of clients who trusted me, drawing strength from their calm. Every night I reviewed my documentation folder, adding small notes, updating timelines. Rachel checked in with me every few days through our secure channel. Her instructions were always clear. Document everything. Eat or drink nothing you didn't prepare yourself when the dinner comes. And Sophia, trust the plan. If you've ever had to live a double life inside your own home, pretending everything is normal while quietly preparing for the worst betrayal imaginable, type double life in the comments. It takes a kind of strength most people never have to find. Diane called me on a Wednesday evening, her voice warm and excited. "Sophia, sweetheart, I'm hosting a special anniversary dinner this Saturday. Just the four of us. I've been planning the menu all week. Something extra special for you." I could hear the satisfaction in her tone. She thought this was the night they would finally win. I answered softly, "I wouldn't miss it, Diane." That week I prepared like a nurse, readying for surgery. I charged my portable battery pack, saved emergency contacts on my home screen, and had a long conversation with Rachel about the dead man's switch timing. If I missed the 11 p.m. check-in on Saturday night, she would execute the full package. Restraining orders, police reports, asset protection filings. Everything pre-drafted and ready. Saturday morning, I stood in front of my mirror, adjusting my dress, looking myself in the eyes. I was about to walk into a beautifully set trap with 3 people who believed they were about to take everything from me, and I was going to let them think it was working. I drove to the Caldwell estate with my heart steady and my mind clear. The lights were glowing. The front door stood open. Diane waited in the doorway wearing a perfect navy dress, arms wide open. "Sophia, my dear, happy anniversary." The hug lingered a second too long. Behind her, the dining room looked like a stage set for the final act. And in that moment, I knew we had all reached the point of no return. I drove to the Caldwell estate with my heart steady and my mind clear. The lights were glowing. The front door stood open. Diane waited in the doorway, wearing a perfect navy dress, arms wide open. "Sophia, my dear, happy anniversary." The hug lingered a second too long. She smelled of garden roses and something sharper underneath, maybe anticipation. Behind her, the dining room looked like a stage set for the final act. Candlelight flickering across heirloom china. Soft music playing. A bottle of expensive red wine already breathing on the sideboard. Brooke was already there, leaning against the kitchen island with a glass in hand, smiling a little too brightly. Ethan stood by the tall windows, hands in his pockets, his expression carefully neutral. "Happy anniversary, babe," he said, kissing my cheek. His lips barely touched my skin. I smiled the way I had practiced for weeks. "Thank you all for doing this. It means a lot." I held up my sealed water bottle. "Early start tomorrow at the new center, so just water for me tonight." A quick flicker crossed Diane's face. Disappointment? Calculation? But it vanished behind her warm hostess smile. "Of course, sweetheart, whatever makes you comfortable." Dinner began smoothly on the surface. Roast chicken with rosemary, perfectly seasoned vegetables from Diane's garden, mashed potatoes so creamy they practically melted. Conversation flowed around the table. Brooke talking about her latest business idea, Ethan mentioning a project at work, Diane sharing nostalgic stories about Ethan's childhood. I laughed at the right moments, asked questions, played the part perfectly. Under the table, my thumb hovered near my phone, ready. Then came dessert. Diane disappeared into the kitchen and returned carrying a beautiful glass dish. "Lavender honey cake," she announced proudly, setting it right in front of me. "I made it fresh this morning. I know it's your favorite, Sophia." She had remembered me mentioning it once, almost 2 years ago. The detail was impressive and terrifying. She cut me a generous slice. The cake looked perfect. Golden, fragrant with lavender, drizzled with honey. I picked up my fork. The first bite was sweet, floral, comforting. The second bite carried a faint, bitter edge underneath the honey. Something chemical, slightly metallic, lingering on the back of my tongue. I knew immediately. I ate nearly half the slice anyway. I needed enough in my system for the toxicology panel to catch it clearly. Baseline blood work from 2 weeks earlier would do the rest. I set my fork down and smiled. "Diane, this is absolutely wonderful. Thank you." She watched me closely, her eyes never leaving my face. "I'm so glad you like it, darling." 20 minutes later, the first wave hit. It started as a sudden wave of nausea rising from my stomach into my chest. My palms went cold and clammy. The edges of the room began to soften and tilt. I pressed my hands flat on the table to steady myself. "Sophia, you look a little pale, honey," Diane said, her voice full of practiced concern. She had been waiting for this moment. "Excuse me," I murmured. "I need to use the restroom." I walked slowly down the hallway, each step deliberate. Once inside, I locked the door, sat on the closed toilet lid, and pulled out my phone with trembling fingers. I texted Rachel, symptoms starting, ate the cake, maybe 30 minutes before it gets bad. Timer on. Her reply was instant. "Copy. I'm on standby. Dead man switch active. Stay strong." I splashed cold water on my face, looked at myself in the mirror. My lips were losing color, but my eyes were still clear. I whispered to my reflection, "You've got this." When I returned to the table, the room was spinning faster. "I think I need to lie down," I said. "I'm not feeling well." Ethan was on his feet immediately. "I'll call our doctor." "No," I said sharply. "Take me to the hospital. Saratoga General ER now." Diane's hand paused mid-reach for her phone. For a split second, I saw the surprise in her eyes. This wasn't going exactly according to her plan. but she recovered quickly. Of course, sweetheart. Ethan, drive her. We'll follow right behind. I grabbed my purse, my water bottle, and my phone. As Diane held the front door open for me, she touched my arm gently. We're right here with you. She wanted me in that hospital. That had always been part of their plan. What she didn't know was that it had become part of mine too. If you've ever had to walk straight into danger with a smile on your face, because you knew the trap you set was stronger than theirs, type trap in the comments. The drive to the hospital felt endless. My vision blurred at the edges, but my mind stayed focused on one thing. The plan was in motion. And there was no turning back now. The drive to the hospital felt endless. My vision blurred at the edges, but my mind stayed focused on one thing. The plan was in motion, and there was no turning back now. Ethan helped me into the ER, his arm around my waist. I was vomiting by the time we arrived, heart racing, skin clammy. The triage nurse moved quickly. They started an IV, drew blood, ran an EKG, and asked what I had eaten. Ethan answered smoothly, family dinner. She might have a sensitivity. Diane and Brooke arrived within 15 minutes, sweeping in like they owned the place. Diane immediately took charge. We need a private room for my daughter-in-law. The Caldwell family will cover everything. She needs quiet and privacy. They accommodated her. Within the hour, I was moved to a VIP suite on the 3rd floor. Spacious, dim lighting, a couch for visitors, and a window overlooking the parking lot. It was exactly the kind of controlled environment they wanted. I drifted in and out as the sedative took stronger hold. Each time I surfaced, the scene in the room felt heavier. Ethan sitting in the corner with his head in his hands. Brooke scrolling her phone by the window. Diane stationed near the door, speaking in low voices to nurses. At one point, I tried to reach for my phone on the chair just 3 feet away. It might as well have been 3 miles. A nurse patted my hand gently. Rest, honey. Your family is here. The clock on the wall read 2:07 a.m. when I woke again. The room was dim. IV still dripping, heart monitor beeping steadily at 68 beats per minute. I felt groggy but present. The door was half open, and there they were, Diane and Brooke standing just outside in the hallway, voices low but clear. You're sure she finished enough of the cake? Diane whispered tightly. Brooke let out that same soft, satisfied laugh I had heard earlier. She ate almost half, Mom. Relax. The sedative should keep her out until morning. Ethan can present the paperwork first thing. By the time she's lucid, everything will be ours. My stomach twisted, but I kept my breathing slow and my eyes half closed. I listened as they detailed the rest. The forged POA, the conservatorship filing scheduled for Monday, how they would redirect my business accounts. Every word was evidence. I waited until their footsteps moved away, then reached for my phone. Battery low, but the message went through to Rachel. Execute the plan now. They're talking in the hallway. I have it all. Her reply came in under 2 minutes. On my way. Stay calm. Do not say a word to anyone. The switch is live. At 7:45 a.m., Rachel Morales walked into the room like a quiet storm. Gray blazer, black portfolio, calm authority in every step. She sat in the visitor chair, placed 2 thick folders on the bedside table, and gave me a small nod. We didn't speak much. We didn't need to. At 8:10 a.m., the door opened. Diane entered first, carrying flowers and a concerned expression. Brooke followed in a cardigan, Ethan last with his hands in his pockets. Diane's face arranged itself into worry until her eyes landed on Rachel. Who is this? She asked, her voice still warm but now edged. I answered clearly, voice steady, despite the lingering fog. This is my attorney, Rachel Morales. The flowers lowered slightly. The temperature in the room dropped. Rachel stood, buttoned her blazer, and spoke with surgical precision. Mrs. Caldwell, please sit down. We have several matters to discuss. She didn't wait for agreement. At approximately midnight last night, a healthcare power of attorney bearing Sophia Langford's purported signature was presented to admissions. That document has been formally challenged as a forgery 6 weeks ago. A police report for forgery, fraud, and conspiracy has already been filed. Diane's mouth opened, then closed. Brooke took a half step back. Ethan's face drained of color. Rachel continued without pause. An emergency temporary restraining order was granted at 7:52 this morning. None of you may contact Ms. Langford, access her accounts, or attempt to exercise any authority under the contested documents. Diane tried to recover, softening her voice into that familiar motherly tone. Sophia, sweetheart, you're confused. The medication, the stress family doesn't need lawyers between us. We can talk about this privately. I looked her straight in the eyes from the hospital bed, IV still in my arm. Family doesn't drug family, Diane. The room went deathly silent except for the steady beep of the heart monitor. Brooke broke first, words tumbling out. Mom told me it was just something mild to help you rest, so Ethan could handle the paperwork. I didn't know it would make you this sick. I swear I didn't. Enough, Brooke, Diane snapped, but her hands were trembling. Rachel's voice cut through like steel. We have baseline blood work from 2 weeks ago. A full toxicology panel is currently running on the samples drawn last night. If it shows a substance not present in the baseline, and we all know it will, this moves from a family matter to a criminal one. At that moment, the attending physician entered with preliminary results. Ms. Langford, your panel shows elevated levels of a sedative hypnotic not prescribed to you, consistent with oral ingestion 8 to 12 hours ago. The mask finally shattered. Diane stood tall for one last attempt at control, but her voice cracked. After everything this family has done for you, I answered quietly, family doesn't poison family. Brooke started crying. Ethan couldn't look at me. Diane picked up her purse, turned, and walked out without another word. Brooke and Ethan followed. Rachel met the arriving police officers in the hallway and handed over the full evidence package. I gave my statement clearly, fact by fact, the way I had been trained as a nurse. The trap they had set for me had become the evidence locker that would end them. The trap they had set for me had become the evidence locker that would end them. Within the hour, 2 detectives from the Saratoga County Sheriff's Office arrived at the hospital. Rachel briefed them in the hallway before they entered my room. She handed over the complete package, the pre-filed forgery challenge, screenshots of Diane's conservatorship email, my encrypted notes with timestamps, the recorded hallway conversation from 2:07 a.m., baseline blood work versus the fresh toxicology results, and the hospital admission records. I gave my statement calmly and precisely. Facts only, no emotion, the way I had been trained during my nursing years. The taller detective asked if I wanted to press charges. I looked him in the eye and said, yes, all of them. By late afternoon, the preliminary toxicology report was official. Elevated levels of a non-prescribed sedative hypnotic, consistent with the amount I had consumed in the lavender honey cake. Diane was arrested the following day on charges, including assault by administering a noxious substance, a serious felony, forgery of a legal instrument, conspiracy to commit financial fraud, and attempted financial exploitation of a vulnerable adult. Bail was set at $250,000. Brooke cooperated almost immediately. She took a plea deal, reduced to misdemeanor conspiracy. In exchange for testifying against her mother, she received 3 years of supervised probation, 250 hours of community service, and full restitution. Ethan also cooperated. He admitted to knowing about the forged POA and the unauthorized transfers. His charges were reduced to a single count of financial document fraud. No jail time, but a permanent felony on his record. The emergency restraining order became permanent. I filed for divorce the same week I was discharged from the hospital. It was finalized in just under 5 months. I kept everything. Every Langford Wellness Center, all my personal accounts, my home, my trust. None of it had ever been placed in Ethan's name or touched by the Caldwell Family Trust. The Caldwell estate went into foreclosure 3 months later. The remaining properties were liquidated to cover mounting debts and legal fees. The family that had spent years trying to take what I built lost far more than they ever tried to gain. 6 months after that night, I sat on the wide porch of my new lake house just outside Rochester. The morning sun warmed my face as I sipped coffee and watched my rescue golden retriever chase leaves across the grass. Langford Wellness had just signed contracts to open 2 more centers. I had promoted 3 incredible therapists to regional directors so I could finally step back a little and breathe. I wasn't bitter anymore. I wasn't even angry. I was clear. I finally understood the difference between being wanted and being useful. The people who say, "We're family," the loudest, are sometimes the ones you need the strongest boundaries against. And the quietest strength, the kind built in silence, documented in late nights, and protected with preparation, is often the most powerful. That's my story. 1 forged signature. 1 slice of lavender honey cake I ate with my eyes wide open. 1 single text message that said, "Execute everything now," and ended years of quiet theft. If this story reminded you to check your own power of attorney, review your trust documents, or trust that gut feeling when something feels off in your own family, take that as your sign. Do it this week. Don't wait for the cake to be served. And if you're in the middle of your own silent battle right now, trying to protect what you've built while smiling through the pressure, I want you to know this. You are not alone. You are stronger than they think. Type, "I am enough," in the comments below. Share this video with someone who needs to hear it. Drop a heart if you believe in protecting your peace. Thank you for sitting with me through every part of this. Thank you for listening. I'll see you in the next Calm Drama Stories, where we remember that the calmest voices are often the ones that survive the storm.